In 2017, the Nintendo Switch began its life with a massive open world designed by Monolith Soft, in the form of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And here, at the beloved console's end, we see things come full circle with Xenoblade X Definitive Edition, yet another massive open world created by Monolith Soft. And given all that Nintendo's Golden Dev team has brought to the Switch era, it's only fitting that they mark both its beginning and its end. However, Xenoblade X isn't just an end for the Nintendo Switch, as it also serves as the perfect look into Monolith's past and even their future. During the golden age of SquareSoft, a young Tetsuya Takahashi began to make a name for himself as a remarkably skilled artist, contributing to acclaimed titles such as Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy V and VI, with Takahashi notably creating the iconic opening of Final Fantasy VI, even going against the intentions of the producer Hironobu Sakaguchi. As the PlayStation era dawned, Takahashi submitted a potential script for Final Fantasy VII to Square. Unfortunately, his concept was rejected for being, quote, too dark and complicated for a fantasy. However, Square still allowed him to lead his own project, codenamed Project Noah, which would ultimately become the cult classic Xenogears. Despite its commercial success, Xenogears was released during a period in time when Square was increasingly focused on Final Fantasy, and it quickly became apparent to Takahashi that a sequel was unlikely. Coupled with a lack of creative freedom, he, along with several like-minded developers, left Square to found their own studio, Monolith Soft, under the wing of Namco. At Monolith Soft, they began to work on a spiritual successor to Xenogears titled Xenosaga, an ambitious sci-fi epic originally planned as a 6-part series. However, due to the underwhelming sales of Episode 2, the saga was condensed into a trilogy. Around the time of Episode 3's release, Monolith once again began to feel the weight of lost creative control following the Bandai Namco merger. Enter Nintendo. In 2007, Nintendo acquired an 80% stake in Monolith Soft, but this time, the experience would be different. Nintendo not only shared Monolith's developmental philosophy, but also respected and trusted their talent. That trust would become evident during the development of their next major project, Monado Beginning of the World. As development progressed, the game's ambitious scope threatened its projected deadline. Takahashi prepared to compromise, presenting several options to scale back the project, but to his surprise, Nintendo rejected them all, urging him and his team to instead focus on completing their vision. During development, former Nintendo president Satoru Iwata personally suggested a new name for the project. We decided to call it Xenoblade, to honor Mr. Tetsuya Takahashi, who poured his soul into making this and who has been working on the Xeno series. On June 10th, 2010, Xenoblade Chronicles launched in Japan to both critical acclaim and strong sales. This success eventually led to an English release over a year later, with Europe receiving the game in August 2011 and Australia in September. Notably, however, there was no North American release at the time. This omission sparked a fan campaign known as Operation Rainfall, which lobbied for the localization of 3 titles: The Last Story, Pandora's Tower, and Xenoblade Chronicles. While the campaign is often credited for the game's eventual release in the United States, former Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé offered a more pragmatic perspective. I wanted to bring Xenoblade here. The deal was, how much of a localization effort is it? How many units are we going to sell? Are we going to make money? We were literally having this debate while Operation Rainfall was happening. We had to make sure it was a strong financial proposition. I'm paid to make sure that we're driving business forward, so we're aware of what's happening, but in the end, we've got to do what's best for the company. The thing we know about petitions is that 100,000 signatures doesn't mean 100,000 sales. While the exact impact of Operation Rainfall remains debatable, its role in raising awareness of Xenoblade in North America is undeniable. It was one of the key avenues through which many Western fans first discovered the title. The second major boost came in June 2014, courtesy of Chugga Conroy, one of the more prominent figures in the Let's Play community. After teasing the project for some time, he announced his 28th Let's Play would be of Xenoblade Chronicles. The first episode alone amassed over 3 million views, with the full series reaching many millions more. Given his audience largely composed of Nintendo and RPG fans, it served as a perfect vehicle to introduce the game to an even wider community. The third and final catalyst arrived later that year in August, when Shulk, the protagonist of Xenoblade, was revealed as a playable fighter in Super Smash Bros., a franchise known for promoting lesser-known Nintendo properties in the West, such as Mother and Fire Emblem. At this point, you might be wondering why this history matters. It's because understanding the broader context of Monolith Soft and the Xeno series is essential to grasping the discourse that surrounded Xenoblade Chronicles X. While the game is looked upon more fondly today, its initial reception was divisive for two primary reasons. The first issue was availability. Despite receiving an initial full Western release, unlike its predecessor, X was exclusive to the Wii U, a console that saw notoriously low sales. This limited its reach, ultimately preventing it from surpassing Xenoblade Chronicles in sales, both in Japan and globally. Given the challenge the community had already faced in accessing the first game, this exclusivity likely led to some frustration. The second source of division was what you might call the Wind Waker effect. While X was a strong game in its own right, it differed significantly from Xenoblade Chronicles. Its story and setting aligned more with Xenogears or Saga, and although the combat resembled that of its predecessor, it was more complex in execution. These differences, as is often the case, were initially met with resistance, especially from those that expected a direct sequel. In truth, X was closer in spirit to an Atlas-style spin-off than a continuation of the first Xenoblade. Over time, however, perspectives evolved as players grew more accustomed to what X offered. Appreciation for its unique qualities grew, and today it's regarded more positively than at launch. That said, X was not without valid criticism. The user interface was wildly panned, particularly due to the extremely small text. Combat tutorials were lacking, and mechanics like changing time or swapping party members were unnecessarily cumbersome. Worst of all, the game ended on a cliffhanger, one that many believed would never be resolved. And yet, against all odds, in the early hours of October 29th, 2024, Nintendo, unexpectedly, announced that Xenoblade Chronicles X would be coming to the Nintendo Switch in the form of a new definitive edition. On March 20th, 2025, Xenoblade Chronicles X, nearly a decade after the original's release, finally became widely available to the now massive Xenoblade fanbase, thanks to the new definitive edition, which is a title it more than earns as it improves upon the original in almost every conceivable way. The previously criticized UI has been completely redesigned for better readability, combat mechanics are now clearly explained, and numerous quality of life improvements make various systems more intuitive. Most notably, the story has been expanded, with new chapters that provide a long-awaited conclusion to the original's cliffhanger ending. However, X's Definitive Edition doesn't merely correct the shortcomings of the past, it meaningfully expands upon the original experience. It introduces new characters with their own side stories, along with additional abilities, missions, scales, and a brand new combat mechanic, Quick Cooldown. While simple in concept, allowing players to use arts more frequently, it adds a whole new layer of strategic depth to the already intricate combat system. Early on, it helps speed up battles when arts are limited, and late game, it enables faster damage ramp up, quicker access to emergency arts, and when paired with overdrive, faster combo execution and counter accumulation. Speaking of overdrive, another welcome change is a new in-game guide that appears each time the mode is activated. Given how many players either misunderstood or completely missed the combo system in the original release, this addition is both necessary and highly appreciated. Beyond story and gameplay, one of the more impactful upgrades lies in the visuals. The Definitive Edition features upgraded character models, improved textures, and most notably enhanced lighting. The result is an even more stunning version of Mira, a world that remains an absolute joy to explore, especially with the new scale, Racefelg, which introduces an entire new way to traverse the environment. As impressive as X's Definitive Edition is, it isn't without its flaws. While the story has been expanded, it remains the shortest of the Xeno franchise and still suffers from pacing issues. Progression is gated behind specific requirements, preventing players from advancing the story freely. In terms of gameplay, although there are many party members, they often feel inconsequential. The main character significantly outperforms them, and any character not directly controlled by the player tends to function more as a damage sponge than a contributor. Additionally, several quests can lead to pseudo-soft locks, especially those that require Frontier Nav materials. These depend on placing specific probes on the map and then waiting for them to randomly generate the required item, a process that can take minutes or even hours. One early Affinity mission is especially notorious for this. Despite these shortcomings, the positives vastly outweigh the negatives, and so Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition remains one of the finest games available on the Nintendo Switch. We've explored Monolith's past, and we've discussed its present, but what about its future? With the announcement of the Switch 2, we've finally gotten a glimpse at the hardware powering Nintendo's next generation. It's a significant leap forward, reportedly capable of running games at up to 120 frames per second, and even supporting 4K resolution. Among the titles it can handle are Final Fantasy VII Remake and Cyberpunk 2077, a clear sign that the console will provide Monolith with considerably more room to flex their creative and technical muscles. Given that Monolith has always been a team known for pushing boundaries, even going back to their Xenogears days, it's easy to imagine their next Xeno title being one of the most visually stunning releases of its year. But what exactly can we expect? As for now, information about the next Xeno game is incredibly scarce. The only confirmed detail is a cryptic promise that the game will, quote, betray expectations, and this could be interpreted in several ways. Perhaps like Xenoblade Chronicles X, it will subvert the expectation of being a direct sequel and instead present a largely standalone story. It might also signal a dramatic shift in tone or gameplay, perhaps leaning more heavily into the sci-fi aspects or even overhauling the combat system entirely. Some fans speculate that the phrase hints at something even more unexpected, like a remake of Xenogears or Saga, both of which have been subtly referenced in recent titles. Alternatively, it could signal a brand new IP that breaks entirely from what we associate with the Xenoblade name. Honestly, we just don't know yet, and only time will tell. What we can say with some confidence is that whatever Monolith does next is almost certain to be a spectacle, and one that fans will either love or hate. And that concludes our little history lesson. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and maybe even subscribing to the channel. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Did you enjoy this style of video? Would you like to see more of it in the future? And let me know what you think I could have improved upon. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you're still here, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.